Certainly.
All right. Good morning, Doug. I hear you've got a list of some important things that happened this day in history.
Well, there's something interesting that happens just about every day in history, depending how far back we go. And of course, one of the gripes that I have with Encyclopedia Britannica online is that there are woke editors, and where are there not woke editors in a publication today, seem to emphasize the trivial as opposed to things that are of lasting value. Anyway, with that, what happened today? Uh, about number one on their list is that today in 1937 was the birthright of Madeleine Albright. I always called her Madeleine Half-Bright. She's a person that obviously had a high IQ. Actually, I met her in a receiving line in Washington, D.C. for some function 15 years ago, I'm guessing. And she impressed me as kind of frumpy and pear-like, not unlike Janet Yellen, actually. Anyway, it's meaningless. It's not like Madeleine and I had a conversation, but at that point, having been unimpressed with her physically and from the very brief receiving line conversation we had, I got into the habit of calling her Madeleine Half-Bright. Anyway, so why is she famous? She was an American ambassador to the United Nations for some years. She was a professor of international politics at Georgetown, which we get all kinds of political types that are also professors at Georgetown for that type of thing. But I can think of two reasons why Madeleine is famous, and the Encyclopedia Britannica puts her number one on the list of things that happened today. One, they brought up the fact that she said in her rabid support for Hillary Clinton, she says, and I think I'm quoting this about exactly, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. So I don't know why the encyclopedia pointed that out, but to me, it speaks very ill of her character that she would say something like that. Why? Why should you support somebody just because you share an accidental bond with them? Just because she's a woman, well, you have to support other women? That's crazy. That's not an intelligent criteria at all. And I would say, based on that, it's an indication that although Madeleine undoubtedly had a very high IQ, she was stupid. Now, I have to define the word stupid, okay? It's usually used as a pejorative. I'm using it in a more technical way. And I would define, there's a couple of ways we can define stupid, but my favorite way is it's an unwitting tendency to self-destruction. And
That seems to summarize her well based upon what I know of her history.
yeah, what do you think? Anything
Well,
in
I just think
particular?
with I mean, she was responsible for, as the Secretary of State for the U.S., she was responsible for, making sure for all of our foreign relations, essentially. And in the process, she supported rabidly everything that happened in Iraq. There's this famous video of her being interviewed, and the interviewer says, it's reported that 500,000 Iraqi children died because of this. Was it worth it? And she says, yeah, it was worth it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's interesting. The Encyclopedia Britannica didn't emphasize that because just to say something like that, it shows we're dealing with basically a criminal personality. And another example of that type of thing was Kosovo. Where the US or NATO or the US always likes to act in a consortium. They'll grab some other dog shit country so that they're not acting unilaterally. But when Kosovo split off from Serbia, the Serbians didn't like it. Okay, this is the way states act. If somebody wants to secede, you can't secede. We want to control the territory that you have. So it doesn't matter who you are. You can't almost never split off peaceably. Well, Kosovo is an interesting situation because the Serbs, and this may be ancient history to most people, but it was one of the things that Madeleine was best known for. So historically, Kosovo was kind of the heartland of Serbia back in the days when they were a big medieval power, and subsequently was taken over by Mohammedans, basically Albanians that wound up inundating Kosovo. So it's really, they're all Mohammedans, and it's culturally different from Serbia, but politically it was part of Serbia. So they split off. And the usual thing happened. The Serbs invaded and people were accusing them of genocide, and maybe it was. I mean, these people in the Balkans hate each other for all kinds of different reasons. So anyway, Madeleine got the US and friends, NATO and friends, if you would, involved in bombing the Serbs. Okay, well, this is all quite criminal and quite stupid, getting involved in a foreign war. I mean, hey, wait a minute. Hasn't that happened recently? Oh, I know what happened. The Donbass region wanted to split off from the Ukraine, and they're not supposed to do that. But wait a minute. Instead of supporting the Serb equivalent, the nation state, that we're supporting. In other words, instead of supporting the Kosovo lookalike, which is the Donbass in the Ukraine, we're doing the opposite. Sometimes why?
There's no principles in any of this. It's
There's
all
no
like
principles,
chess playing.
no principles at all. So why do we want to preserve the political independence of the Kosovars? Well, let's see. If we wanted to, we could go into the Middle East and attack 4 countries: Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, to help the Kurds be completely independent. How about that? Would that work? You know, the next thing, when there's another Rwanda lookalike in Africa, which there will be, why doesn't the US fly to the middle of nowhere and start bombing somebody? Which side is right? Which side is wrong? This is crazy. So she was a horrible human being and a horrible Secretary of State.
Now, if I recall that Serbia action, that is the one where the US bombed the Chinese embassy there, right? So if that's true, that was 25 years ago. Last week was the anniversary of that.
That's right. That's right. US warplanes flying in Belgrade, which is a major city. And why do they hit the Chinese embassy? I mean, that's kind of odd.
Yeah, and Xi went there for the 25th anniversary to sort of commemorate the loss and say that they didn't forget and that it will not happen again.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope not. Anyway, Encyclopedia Britannica thinks that she's the most important person to have been born today. I disagree. So a couple of words on her. Another thing that happened today was in 1940, the McDonald brothers opened up their first McDonald's restaurant in California. And it would have been wonderful back then to do what Ray Kroc did and turn them into, I guess, the largest restaurant chain in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to understate or overstate the impact McDonald's has had, good and bad. You know,
But perhaps their impact will be somewhat less in the future because people have been ranting about the fact that when you go to McDonald's and you order a Happy Meal with a Big Mac and some kind of a large drink, and a dessert and fries. Oh, gotta have fries. That's the high profit item for these chains, incidentally. The bill can come to $18 now, just for a big rat and, you know, these other things. And actually,
Yeah.
I think their best product is what I've always called the little rat, which is their basic hamburger, just a little hamburger on a little bun, because otherwise, you know, you're scarfing down minimum 600 calories for a what do they call that? Big Mac.
Yeah, Big Mac or quarter pounder. Yeah. But the thing is, I think if you looked at those regular hamburgers now, I think you'll find that they are much smaller than you remember. I don't know when the last time you had one was.
Yeah, that's right. Americans like to supersize things, of course. And back in the days when these restaurants, fast food, were just getting popular, there used to be a group called Little Tavern that, well, there were a couple of them like that. They were urban and they sold little hamburgers for a dime. I mean, this
So
is
like White Castle type burgers.
White Castle, exactly. Yes, that type of thing. And they didn't make it because they were urban locations and they used to have old crumb bums serving the stuff. And you'd much rather have a freshly laundered teenage kid who's on his way up than an old bum who's on his way down. Who, for some reason, some business reason, they like to hire those kind of people. So anyway, good for McDonald's, or kind of good for them. But if they've got $18 Happy Meals right now, they may be losing the plot.
Yeah. But I mean, the way the costs have all gone up, I don't know. You know, I don't know if they're trying to expand margins or if just trying to keep them the same.
No getting around it. But you order a Happy Meal with one of their ultra high carbohydrate and sugar desserts, plus a big drink, whether it is a shake or a Coke,
Okay.
and the fries. I mean, you're talking about probably 2,500 calories, which is more than an adult male should eat in a day, and that's just one Happy Meal. So I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's their business. I don't own McDonald's stock, so I really don't care. What else is there that happened today that was interesting? There was an article in the Wall Street Journal today, a newspaper which has gone way downhill over the years, as all newspapers have. And it was about the terminal corruption in scientific papers these days, where many, like many thousands of scientific papers have been published, and they're full of gobbledygook and phony facts, and they're unreliable. And I thought it was, you know, very nice that the journal published this, because we talked about this, as I recall, several years ago, about the dishonesty in the scientific publishing business, where things are done for political reasons as opposed to scientific reasons. And one thing that it pointed out in this article, which if anybody here has a subscription to the journal, for what it's worth, that Wiley, which apparently publishes hundreds of scientific journals where they're peer-reviewed papers. And the article said there have been about 110 million, or was it 170 million, but a really large number of peer-reviewed papers that have been published in these various journals, some of them quite obscure. But Wiley, the publisher, bought an Egyptian publisher of scientific papers and paid $300 million for it. And what struck me is, wait a minute, how can you buy a scientific paper publisher from a Muslim country? Because there are no Muslim Nobel Prize winners or really scientists in the hard sciences, because a lot of this stuff is in conflict with Sharia law. So
Hmm.
how could an Egyptian publisher of scientific papers have anything that's worth $300 million? So it makes me question the management of Wiley, but also question these scientific paper public. Science is being discredited by all this politically correct nonsense, frankly. A lot of these papers have got to be defending things like global warming, for instance. Total political scam, nothing to do with science, or for that matter, COVID and its
Right.
vaccine.
Doesn't this just invalidate the whole peer review process as a valid methodology for these things? I mean, it just seems like that doesn't do any good if they have to retract so many papers and if political initiatives can be pushed based upon peer review.
I suspect that a lot of the peer review is one person in science scratching the back of the other person. Because frankly, with the number of papers that are published today, not how many people have the time to read and analyze very many papers. So you probably just skate over the top of it. So I wonder if the average person trusts science, or I should say the science, which is different from science these days, as much as he did. It's like science is another institution that's being built on a foundation of sand, where anybody with any sense starts, well, you should question everything anyway, but everything in science is becoming questionable now.
Yeah, and I think you have to question it because so many things were put forward as fact, or so obviously even at the time not fact, that I know you kind of have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, I think, because it's just so corrupted.
And with the advent of AI being able to put together very credible, lengthy papers uh, instantaneously, uh, the problem might get worse. The dishonesty, the lack of real research, where people do these things in order, well, like that horrible person, Claudine Gay, that was the president of
Harvard, was it?
Harvard, where she plagiarized everything. Well, I'm sure if they dug deeper, especially in the days of AI, they'll find that a lot of these horrible people just cribbed everything and passed it off as their own.
Almost certainly. Yeah. It's too hard to avoid, I think, for
Yeah.
these people. Too tempting. Well,
So
I want to share. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to bring up the next thing, but there's time for
Okay,
that.
I just want to share this story of one of our file members and his recent experience in China. He lives in China, American guy from the Midwest, and he had kidney stones and had to go to, get that taken care of in China. And I just thought his experience was very interesting because essentially the entire thing, so he shows up without an appointment, shows up, pays 180 RMB, and I think, what is that? That would be
Oh, 8 to 1, 7 to 1, something like that, isn't it?
right. Yeah. So he paid nothing, $15 or
Something
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, basically to get in and meet with somebody. Then they send him up to go, and he's got to get a scan, I guess, an ultrasound. So that's what he's paying for. That 180 RMB is for the ultrasound, and then he goes down and gets his the medicine that he needs for it, which was another 212 RMB, and that was it. In and out, very efficient process, good bedside manner. Most of them spoke English, very simple in and out, and super cheap. And so let's say it was 400 RMB. So basically, his cost on that is, let's say it's $50 for this would be about what it is, right? $50 maybe. And we asked John, you're a co-author on the books and he's a medical doctor, and we asked him what this would cost, he thought, to do this in the US.
And he's a medical doctor that specializes in looking at costs and services in the medical system too, so he knows. But go ahead.
Yeah, so he said it would cost $350 to see a urologist after a 4-week wait, then $1,800 for the ultrasound. But no one waits 4 weeks with kidney stones because they're very painful. Instead, they go to the ER. Cost in ER is a minimum of $3,000. These prices in a hospital-based clinic can vary enormously, but it's not uncommon for an ER visit for this to be $10,000 or more. And he says, it's interesting, whatever the part of the Chinese system is, because this is a private hospital our friend went to, is free market based, and it's likely helping. What this story tells me is how horrible our fascist medical system has become in the US.
Yeah, good observation. Why, to think that in order to get it done, you have to go to an emergency room and it's so expensive. But why? Well, I guess it's because emergency rooms are where bums and vagrants and migrants go because they have to take anybody, apparently by law, and it's usually expensive. So they have to charge everybody else enough so that they don't go bankrupt.
But even with that, this guy, it's cost him $50. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like it's like there's something so deeply fundamentally wrong, or so many things that are so deeply fundamentally wrong. It's impossible to even reconcile those two experiences. I mean,
yeah,
we have lost track, and we've lost our way in the US.
that's right. In China, everything is quick, efficient, polite, cheap, and it works. And here it's expensive and takes you, yeah, they've got to do something to change things, but I don't know if they will or can, for that matter.
I don't even know where you begin to change it. You'd have to start from the ground up, I think, to rebuild it.
You almost have to wait for a collapse in order to rebuild again on a sound foundation.
Yeah,
Because no matter what you could try to change, there's going to be some pressure group of some type that's going to sue you for something.
no doubt. No doubt. I mean, this is the thing, when healthcare becomes free, it becomes very expensive. And we offer a lot of free healthcare in the US now. And that makes it super expensive. Where in China, you have to pay for everything. You have to pay.
Yeah, and it's the same thing here in Argentina. I think I've talked about this in the past because I've had this infection in my foot, which long story, but the surgery here was cheap, efficient. The follow-up was excellent. Doctor visited my apartment afterwards. No way in hell would that happen in the US.
No, I mean, it says a lot that you can have that. You could have it done anywhere in the world. You're going to be in the US. You were in the US last year with this issue. You're going to be back soon, and yet you wanted to have it done in Argentina.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. And if there was any serious medical intervention that I needed, I'd try to plan ahead so I could have it done in Latin America. Excellent choice. Maybe the best choice in the world, they say, is in Thailand, where they actually specialize in this type of thing, and they're super good and super cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's easy to lose touch with how bad things are because it's a gradual decline, and it just gets more and more expensive every year. Service gets worse and worse every year. Outcomes get worse and worse. But because it's a boiling frog, you don't realize how bad it is. And China, the idea that China would have better medical care than we have is outrageous.
And as bad as things are in the US, it's worse in Canada.
Right. That's what I hear. All right. What else did you have, Doug?
Um, well, it's awful that we wind up talking about everything that's wrong. But when you look at anything that's related to politics, uh,
It's inevitable.
it's the nature of the thing. So Biden has apparently signed into law something that will impose an executive order, perhaps. I'm not sure the exact legalism for it, but 100% duty on Chinese EVs. And we've talked about EVs in the past, and I think they have a place in cities and certain circumstances. They're great. But It basically means no Chinese EVs for you. So
Right.
that, you know, uh,
You could be anti-EV, you can be anti-EV and you can be anti-China, but it's basically putting out of the possibility of a consumer that would benefit from having one, the opportunity to buy it. China has a very good EV by their company BYD called the Seagull, which is $10,000. And it's not a piece of crap. But so think about how expensive cars are now for people who are just on the edge, young families, whatever, that they could get something at, you can't buy any car for $10,000 in the US.
yeah,
So
exactly.
they
Yeah,
want to make sure they can't.
that's right. So there's a lot of people that are not going to have a car because they can't get this. I mean, it really is criminal. And then it was promoted, Biden. I mean, he actually is stupid and also unintelligent, both. And he said, and this will not increase inflation in the US. Well, no, actually, it won't increase inflation because that's a monetary phenomenon. And he's increasing inflation by running $3 trillion deficits, which are all monetized. That's what increases inflation. What this will do by adding 100% duty to the EVs and other stuff, that will increase retail prices, which is related to inflation, but this is a separate thing. So it's all very confused and confusing for the
Yeah,
average
the
person.
couple of the things the tariffs are on, I believe it's 50% on aluminum and steel imports. It's 50% on solar panel imports and 50% on Chinese semiconductors, which I find interesting because remember there was a big deal last year or 2 years ago where they put sanctions on China so they wouldn't have the most advanced semiconductors. So the idea is we were withholding semiconductors from them, we the West. But now that apparently isn't enough. We need to keep China's now producing enough semiconductors on its own. We want to make sure that they aren't actually undercutting our industry.
Yeah, it's very inconvenient for anybody that's trying to produce things to make life better for other people, all these duties. And the money just flows to the government, and the government will do something destructive with that money. So it's bad from absolutely every point of view. Costs people more, reduces their standard of living, gets money in the government's pockets so they can afford to do even more stupid things. So it's, and this is interesting, just when they're making, trying to foment a green revolution, which has got all kinds of problems, they're making solar panels 50% more expensive. Uh, Listen, if you want solar panels made in the US or anything made in the US, I'm sure the US could actually, in point of fact, produce about as cheaply as China. But you have to get rid of regulations, you have to get rid of taxes, you have to create an environment where people want to invest, and people really don't want to do that in the US.
No, they don't. And it's shocking, actually. I think I think this is just this is still opening salvos on a growing trade war that I think is going to emerge, with multiple different participants in the coming years.
Yeah. Uh, what it means is that Americans are being taught through the media that China is our enemy. Uh, well, yeah, you can make anybody your enemy, but I appreciate getting cheap Chinese goods personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, all it is uh you're actually just you're punishing the American consumer by doing it. And I actually think that you will still see Chinese EVs in the US, but just every American who's driving one know that they pay twice as much as they had to get that car. And the other half of it went to the US government coffers.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not going to save General Motors and Ford. Uh, their costs are too high, largely because of the government, direct and indirect action, and the fact that they're old behemoths that are run for the benefit of their managements, frankly.
Exactly. I mean, whereas, right now, part of the thing that made, like some of the big industrial powerhouses in the US successful is that they incorporated all this vertical integration, making it so the supply chains could be better managed and costs could be better managed. And over the last, I don't know, 50 years, there's been an effort to distribute all those supply chains to get cheaper stuff from different places. And the reason why China is able to produce stuff so cheaply right now, a big part of it is because these companies have total vertical integration, whereas Chevy or GM, they don't produce their own headlights. They get those headlights from a supplier. But BYD makes their own batteries. BYD sells their batteries to Tesla. I mean, it's it's just hard to compete.
It is, and when you're making a complex product like a car with many, many hundreds of parts that you're sourcing from outside the supply chain, if it breaks in any place, you cannot deliver the final product. So it's very tenuous, especially when so much stuff comes from China, directly or indirectly. If it's cut off, well, all the manufacturing gets cut off because, well, for lack of a nail, the shoe was lost. For lack of a shoe, the horse was lost. And that's what it is with supply chains. And attacking a major supplier is shooting yourself in the foot.
The supplier for the world.
Yeah.
I mean, even though if we want, like half of the refining of all metals happens in China. So like, even if, I mean, we need them for so much. And and I'm not saying we should need them, but we've gotten ourselves in that position now, and trying to start stuff with them like this, it will have consequences that it might not cause inflation, but it's definitely going to reduce the standard of living for Americans.
Yeah. I don't think Americans really manufacture stuff. We basically seem to turn out paper and software, not real goods. I mean,
Yeah.
I-
Not
I just
manufacturing goods, oil.
oil, yeah, but that's third world stuff, producing
I
commodity.
know.
And,
That's what I
and
think the US has turned into, really. And it's like it's being like its greatest benefit for the rest of the world. I mean, we send money, but we don't have any manufacturing, we don't have any value add stuff. If you take out finance and all that stuff, all it is really the raw materials. That's the big benefit we provide to the world out.
third world stuff, right, exactly. And talk about finance. Well, I'm not sure finance is value added at all. It's just people that are shuffling numbers around where the finance component of the US economy, when you look at the stock market value of finance stocks, it's unbelievable. It's 15, 20%. It seems to me that in an efficient world, it's like your accountant. Okay, that's a cost, but it shouldn't be 20% of the economy. Finance, what is that? Finance, hello, New York, buy. Hello, Chicago, buy. Hello, Los Angeles, sell. New York and Chicago are buying. I mean, it's most finance is just benefits nobody but the financiers.
Exactly. It's value extractive, if anything.
Yeah, exactly. Not value added.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, all right. Well, I know you've got a meeting to run to, so I don't want to go on too long. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about today before we go?
Oh, goodness. Anything on my list? Uh, no, nothing in particular.
Okay, when we come back on Friday, I think we had a conversation about the election before this started. I think we should probably talk about that on Friday. I'm not sure if there's an updated view that you have.
Yeah, and maybe people will have some questions and observations that we can talk about.
Yep. As always, if you're a member of the file, you can ask questions there, and you get top priority. Otherwise, there are a couple other places in Telegram you can ask questions that I pick up if we don't get enough from file members. So we'll cover those on Friday.
Great, Matt. Have a good one.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.